Cities across ASEAN are seeing an increase in the number of light electric vehicles. And this is promising because these vehicles have the potential to help solve a number of urban issues. But there is one city in particular, the Cambodian capital of Phnom Penh, where a number of startups have chosen to launch different kinds of light electric vehicle systems and services. And the public in Phnom Penh are slowly getting accustomed to these new vehicle types and business models, but much work still needs to be done. And today in this video, Sovan and I would like to explore this topic with the goal of gaining a better understanding of public perceptions towards light electric vehicles. And we will do so through a series of interviews and focus group discussions, and the information we gather as the summer project team we will use to help the Cambodian government increase the relative share of light electric vehicles on the city streets. But first of all, what are light electric vehicles?
Good question. Light electric vehicles, they come in many shapes and size, and we can distinguish them usually by their weight, but also by the number of wheels that they have. In the two-wheel category, I can think of electric push scooters, but also electric bicycles, electric moped, or electric motorcycles designed for the movement of people and goods. In the three-wheels category, there is already a diversity of rickshaws that are already available, also designed to move people and goods. In the four-wheel category, we currently have what we call lightweight shuttles or people movers. For instance, in the Philippines, they are already using electric jeepneys.
And why are these light electric vehicles so important and significant?
Light electric vehicles have all the benefits of electric vehicles, as well as light vehicles, which when brought together can help deliver many benefits. Right now, I can think of three main benefits. First, because they are light, they are easier to assemble and require smaller battery packs. Therefore, they are less resource intensive and produce less waste over their lifespan. Second, because they are small, they are more space efficient and are easier to maneuver, both when parked and in motion. So for me, they are truly key to help reduce congestion. Third, LEVs produce zero tailpipe emission. They can help improve localized air quality and reduce noise pollution as well.
Which I think is something that's desperately needed in many ASEAN cities.
Yes, this is truly key to creating more livable cities.
However, I think it has to be said that these light electric vehicles, for all their benefits, they're not a one-size-fits-all urban mobility solution. For all the problems they solve, they also create new ones. And really the three main problems associated with light electric vehicles is one, having enough charging infrastructure to operate these systems and services in a city. The second is having enough trained mechanics to fix and maintain these vehicles. And lastly, and this is at the end of the vehicle's life cycle, we need systems and services in place to manage the battery waste and ideally recycle these batteries. So, Sovan, I'm wondering, what is the current state of electric vehicles in Cambodia?
The Cambodian government aims to have 40% of electric vehicles by 2050. And in order to achieve that, the government is already making small steps towards that direction with the development of an EV roadmap, as well as the deployment of a charging infrastructure. These efforts are aided by the development and the private sector. Talking about the private sector, right now we have companies like Voltra, Very Words, Oika, and we also have Onion, who recently opened a $20 million assembly plant.
That all sounds really promising, especially considering the existing vehicle fleets in Cambodia are made up predominantly of light ICE vehicles. And considering the benefits of light electric vehicles, it's really a no-brainer we transition towards these. However, this is easier said than done, and there's still two big hurdles. One is convincing the public that these are superior vehicles, and as of now, we have a very limited understanding of how they perceive these vehicles. And the second is ensuring that these vehicles really are superior and equally, if not more, convenient and competitive with their ICE counterparts. And today we are concerned with the former, the public,
and as of now, we have a very limited understanding of their opinions and perceptions towards light electric vehicles, which is why we've organized a series of citizen dialogues. And these dialogues will help us better understand the public's wants, desires, and priorities when it comes to these new kinds of electric vehicle fleets. And the insights we get from these dialogues we will share with the government, and we will support them in developing new policies, new designs, and communication strategies. With all that said, let's go ask the public what they would like from light electric vehicles. And to better understand perceptions and opinions on light electric vehicles, we plan a series of focus group discussions and on-street interviews with help from Raksa, our stakeholder engagement expert,
as well as Satea, the summer national expert for Cambodia.
And the key targets we have identified include electric tuk-tuks, LPG tuk-tuks, delivery drivers, elderly, women, and people with impairments, as well as students. And we will also be issuing a public survey which you, the viewer of this video, can complete, but more on that at the end of the video. For now, let's fast forward 2 weeks into the future and share with you our stakeholder engagement findings. We are back after an exciting and eventful 2-week period of on-street interviews and focus group discussions, and I'm pleased to announce that we now have a well-rounded understanding of public perceptions towards light electric vehicles. And so Van, I suggest we first share our general findings and then our findings for the individual focus group discussions. So for general findings, the main problems that the citizens identified in Phnom Penh include traffic congestion and road traffic accidents, poor driving behavior and breaking of traffic laws, and poor management of sidewalks. And these responses we will revisit at the end of the video and see whether or not light electric vehicles can help resolve some of these problems. But for now, let's go over to the target groups, starting with ride-hailing and tuk-tuk drivers. Okay, here we are in the field about to conduct our first set of interviews with the T1 electric tuk-tuk drivers, and we're going to find out how their vehicles are performing and how happy they are driving these new electric vehicles.
We ended up running 2 focus groups, one with electric tuk-tuk drivers and the other one with fuel-based tuk-tuks. This made it possible for us to compare their perceptions about electric tuk-tuks. That being the case, we used participatory tools where we asked the drivers to rate from 1 to 5 the most important factors they consider before purchasing or operating a tuk-tuk. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to summarize the finding into 3 main points. First, the operational costs. Second, competition between the different tuk-tuks, so fuel, LPG and electric tuk-tuks. And third, the barriers for EV adoption. First, for both target groups, the main concern is the operational cost. The fuel-based tuk-tuk drivers have the impression that operating an e-tuk-tuk is cheaper. However, the high initial price of the vehicle is what prevents them from switching to e-tuk-tuk. On the other hand, the e-tuk-tuk drivers share with us that operating an e-tuk-tuk isn't cheap. To travel 100 kilometers with a fuel-based tuk-tuk, it costs around $2 for the drivers, while for the same distance, it costs close to $3.5 with an e-tuk-tuk. And for the maintenance cost, well, the surveyed e-tuk-tuk have been operating the vehicles for less than 3 months, so it is still early to have an opinion for the maintenance part. Second, there's a fierce competition between the fuel and the LPG and e-tuk-tuk, where most of them prefer to rely on ride-hailing apps to get customers. In parallel, you have the fuel tuk-tuk drivers who prefer to rely on street hailing because they get more revenue per trip from this method. However, they have seen their income decrease as most of the customers prefer to use ride-hailing apps for convenience and for safety reasons. For these reasons, this brings questions about the future of the Khmer fuel tuk-tuks. Third, really, this is a difficult situation for the Khmer tuk-tuk drivers that you have to adapt to a new reality. A reality that electric tuk-tuks are now a part of. They are willing to make the switch to e-tuk-tuks. However, we identified two main barriers during our focus group discussions with them. The first barrier is the high initial price of the vehicles. And the second barrier is the digital literacy that prevents them from using efficiently ride-hailing apps where most of the customers are found today. And while we conducted our focus group discussions with the tuk-tuk drivers, we also came across with a group of delivery drivers. What did we find out about them?
Okay, we're out in the field doing our first set of interviews. And Sovan, what are we doing right now?
Well, we just came across some food delivery drivers, and we are interested into having a better understanding of what they think of electric motorbikes.
Yeah, so these delivery drivers, they informed us that they drive anywhere from 30 to 150 kilometers per day. And all 6 of them told us they were aware of electric motorcycles and mopeds. However, none of them were using them because they just don't know how well they compare to their existing ICE mopeds. And they said the main consideration if they were to switch would be the vehicle cost and the operational cost of the vehicle. But the main insight we got from them was they think electric mopeds or motorbikes are too slow for them to be able to do all their deliveries on time, which is why they've chosen to stick to their ICE counterparts. And this takes us to our next target, students. Sovan, what did we discover from these students?
This included volunteer students from the Phnom Penh National University of Management, as well as the Royal University of Phnom Penh, with a total of 11 participants. All students are familiar with LEVs. They've had experience riding in electric bicycles or an electric moped, electric scooters, as well as riding in an e-tuk-tuk for shorter trips in the city. For their main considerations, they would consider most the price, the quality, the design, and the fuel consumptions. And they would also prefer well-known brand as Honda. The students would also consider switching in the future if the price were below $2,000 with an adequate charging infrastructure in the city and in the province. Their biggest fear is the electrocution from the vehicles during the heavy rains. Therefore, they would also like to have more infrastructure for the maintenance of the vehicles. Their main recommendations would be to increase public awareness around the LEVs so that people have more experience and occasion to test the vehicles. Next, we have the elderly. Conrad, what did we find out about them?
So we've got Raksa and her assistant there conducting an on-street interview with an elderly participant in Wat Butom Park. And our methodology is basically to approach people who appear to be elderly, which is 65 years plus. And when we introduce ourselves, we ask them for their age bracket and validate whether or not they are elderly. In the end, we interviewed 3 elderly men and 3 elderly women, and they informed us that they much prefer using their own personal vehicles owing to their convenience and ease of use. And the women, they much prefer being the passenger than the driver. They also informed us that on occasion they do use tuk-tuks and all were aware of the electric tuk-tuks. However, only 1 elderly in 6 used the smartphone ride-hailing apps. Perhaps because of a lack of digital literacy or just old habits die hard. And all elderly participants said they were also aware of electric mopeds and electric motorcycles, and they acknowledged the main benefits such as lower operational costs and a reduction in air and noise pollution. They were, however, also equally aware of some of the disadvantages, such as the lack of existing charging stations and the limited range of the batteries. And then when asked what it would take to switch, they said these 2 issues would need to be improved upon. And in terms of willingness to pay, they said anywhere from $300 to $2,000 is what they would pay for a light electric vehicle. And on this nice Sunday evening in the park, we also interviewed 6 women. What did we learn from the women?
The women all had a preference for using their own mode of transport, even though sometimes they use tuk-tuks on occasions. However, they expressed that the tuk-tuk is too expensive for their daily commuting and safety concerns, even when using the apps, as they don't trust the driver's credential. Regarding the electric vehicles, 5 out of 6 are already familiar with LEVs, and their main factors when considering making the switch is the price, the quality, the design, and the speed. Women would consider switching to EV if the battery quality was improved and if the electric vehicle were on par and if not more competitive with the ICE vehicles. Regarding the cost, women are willing to make the switch if the LEVs cost anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000. Now next, we have the people with impairment groups. What did we find out?
And for this target group, we went to an association that cares for people with impairments, and there we had the opportunity to interview citizens with visual impairments and physical impairments, and they shared with us how they get around the city, expressing that Phnom Penh is a very unpleasant city to get around on foot, which is completely understandable, and that they also prefer not riding on the back of motorcycles. They perceive this to be too dangerous. So their main mode of transport is tuk-tuks, and they use the same ride-hailing apps that we use. One of the visually impaired participants, he said that the tuk-tuk drivers used to be more impatient and less understanding of their situation. However, this has changed, although he did suggest that they take on more ethical training in the future. And this participant also showed us how he goes about booking a grab with his visual impairments using audio cues in his phone. And this particular participant said he was excited for a light electric vehicle future because with these vehicles, there's no gear changing, so he wouldn't be jostled around quite as much. 2, they're not as noisy, so it won't be as much of a traumatic ride for him. And 3, if there's enough of these vehicles in the city streets, it will improve the ambient air quality and again, allow for a much more pleasant ride. So it's clear that light electric vehicles can do much to improve the mobility situation for people with impairments. And if these improvements can be made, it will also be to the benefit of the wider Phnom Penh population. So this brings us to the end of the video, and what have we learned over these last 2 weeks conducting citizen dialogues?
Well, I think we can safely say that there is awareness or an understanding of what LEVs are and how they function. However, people still prefer to rely on what they already know, which is natural. For instance, using ICE vehicles. In the beginning, we mentioned some general findings that we had from the focus group discussions. So now I think we can reflect back a little bit and try to see how LEVs actually mitigate the problems that were addressed.
Yeah, so the main problems were congestion, poor driving behavior, poor management of sidewalk space, and yes, there are ways in which light electric vehicles can help address these problems. However, light electric vehicles are not a one-size-fits-all solution. They can address some of these issues, but only if they are deployed with supporting business models. And these business models need to focus on creating ride-hailing and car-sharing models that will, for example, reduce the absolute number of vehicles on the city street.
Sustainable mobility is also about inclusiveness, social inclusiveness, and to cater for the needs of everyone. That includes the vulnerable groups such as the women, elderly, and people with impairments. In doing so, it actually is better for the city and the local economy because it provides more economic opportunities for everyone.
Absolutely. And I think we should also see the opportunity in this ongoing electric mobility revolution. It's an opportunity to redesign our vehicles from the ground up and not make the mistakes of the past. Right from the onset, we should be designing our vehicles to cater for people with physical impairments, visual impairments, for the elderly, for students, for women, etc. So there's a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities that lie before us. And a big part of creating a sustainable electric mobility future will require taking into account all these different aspects. We'll cover that in future videos. For now, we would like to say a big thanks on behalf of the summer team and a thank you to Energy Lab for supporting us in this initiative. And lastly, we will also be publishing a public survey online that you, the viewer of this video, can complete if you are in Phnom Penh, and your insights we will use to inform Cambodian EV policy and ASEAN level policies.
Thanks for watching. Summer is an ASEAN-German cooperation project implemented by GFA Consulting Group and partners on behalf of GIZ. For more information on the Summer project, do consider checking out www.summer.asia. We look forward to seeing you there.